I'm not actually planning on putting anything up there except some more music and maybe some different things, but doesn't have to be a book either. I mean, it just write down the main reasons why you're here today and why you've been coming. Same thing. Are we ready or are we still writing? Okay. Now the reason I do this, it's like a plume. The reason I do this, and I did it at Becky's, and I remember 20 years ago when I'd go to, some seminars and some different things, and when we started the brain seminar, and I really got involved in all this, and I saw how people were, and it seemed like they were missing the point, and they were going just to get the high from going. Like, they'd go to these things, and it was more like
concert,
a cheerleading thing. The guy that's teaching is the cheerleader, and he's getting everybody worked up, or she is getting everybody worked up. And I'm not saying in a bad way. I'm talking about in a good way. They're doing the right thing. It's wonderful, and they get a high off of it. But then they end up, when they leave, they go home, they return to their programming. See, everything that I want to talk about is always going to be connected to what we've learned about your programming and who you are. And the only way you can become somebody else is to, like we said, get in your frontal lobes and examine yourself and look at the programming. And admit that that's the programming, So my point is this about doing anything like this. I just saw so many people, and they'd have a guru, like they'd pick one out, and it's kind of the one that reminds me is Abraham Hicks. Seems like to have a lot of a following, and people want to go, and that's all they listen to. And it's almost like they are addicted to that being their source. Now, I'm not putting down Abraham Hicks at all. But if the teacher isn't teaching you to not need them someday, they're not doing their job. I'm talking about any guru, any teacher of any type. Their goal should not to be amassing crowds following them. No. Now, I know that can still happen, and people can grow and not go back, and then because they're so well known, you know what I mean? Like, it can happen and be on a constant basis that people are constantly going, But I know a lot of people that they just have this one source, and that's it. And do you see the deception in that? Do you see the distraction? And it hit me. They're substituting this source for the real source. And become dependent. See? That's not what I want here. And that doesn't mean you quit coming because you say, oh, I'm addicted, I need to quit, don't go in there. No, but I want you to know, my desire in all of this is get you to the point you don't need me anymore. Now that doesn't mean we don't get together and meditate and like we're going to do and pray together for healings and do the intention thing. But my real goal is get you to the point you don't need me. I can name right now. I could probably name. I don't know if I could remember all of them, but I know I've had a dozen sources over the last 30 years. One of them was a charismatic preacher named Kenneth Copeland. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. But back when I was into the charismatic movement, he's the one that opened my eyes to some amazing things in the Bible. And I'm glad, because he showed me some things about faith and believing that I didn't hear anywhere else. But when I moved on, I finally moved on, because after a while, his teaching was the same exact thing over and over and over. So once I grasped that, okay. And then, like I said, I got into the brain science. I got into the quantum physics. I'd listen to, like, Greg Braden. I listen to Joe right now. The reason you hear me talk about Joe so much right now, he's right now my teacher that's giving me things that I haven't heard any other places in such a whole connected way to everything. And I'll be done with Joe. I won't need Joe forever. And are you following my thing here? So, I guess the next question I want to ask you, but that's the point of all this also. Do you know what the end product is supposed to be? Let's just go to the end. Let's get to the end of the book. What is the point of being here? Where are you going to end up? Do you know?
Hopefully in your frontal lobes.
That's right.
Yeah.
But, and I don't know, I hope I've been clear on where I want to take you. But what's your, I guess you could say, goal or vision for this to do for you as an end product? Do you know?
Well, can it take you into another dimension or another body? Or
There's a bunch of stuff. Yes, there's a bunch of stuff. Yes. You know what my end goal is? To be so hooked up with the source, I don't need any other one. I mean, if we're already one with source, why do we need a medium? That sounds like the Catholic Church.
Because he needs you to be teachable.
Well, that's true. And I'm not, and first, and also I want to be clear, I'm not saying that's not bad, because we all need that in the beginning. It's a good thing. But again, I'm talking about the end goal. I'm not talking about right now the process. I'm talking about the end goal for me is to be so consciously one and aware with the divine consciousness that I'm living in that all the time. His wisdom, His power, His knowledge, its knowledge. All I got to do is just, like Jesus said, ask and receive, and seek and I find. And He's kind of my hero. You know, Jesus to me is one of the avatars in history that did it. You know, He walked. He did it. He just did it. And He also teaches the method. And He's tried to make it clear that we're no different than Him. We're absolutely no different. So the end goal for me, for you, is you get to the point, you learn how. You may not get there before you don't need me anymore either. To learn how to do that and then practice it. And that's all you need from me. Does that make sense? Now again, like I'm saying, I'm not going to kick you out and, out of the nest or anything like a mama bird does, a bird. But is that where you want to go? I mean, don't you want to go as far as it's possible? I mean, why would you want to stop? Other than the fact that I think that most people subconsciously, and you may be aware of it, but subconsciously are so insecure, have such a poor self-image, and we're talking about the programming, that they feel like they need someone else to do it for them because they're not worthy. Not worthy to approach this Creator on their own. Or it's not going to talk to me. So I need to have somebody like Abraham Hicks download channel and talk to me that way. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Well, I had a source called Bashar. Are you familiar with Bashar? If you 20 years ago told me I was listening to this, I would have said, well, are you crazy? I wouldn't listen to that. But this is an interdimensional extraterrestrial being channeled by Daryl Anka. Okay? He's not even from this dimension. And so when I started following him about 10 years, well not 10, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I don't know how long it's been, and listening to him, oh my gosh. But do you know what drew me to him? He was saying stuff I'd already learned. He was confirming what I was getting directly. And that's what I love. Getting insights in my time, and then somebody else comes along like that. And so I thought, well, this is vibrating with me right here. So I devoured Bashar. I don't listen to him anymore. Because I finally got to the point, he said he's not saying anything different anymore. And I got it. And I agree with him, totally. Now, what's ironic about all this, though, and I'm going to go to the finish line on this after we answer this next question. I got to go back to my notes here. What do you believe your relationship is with the all in all? Where are you right now? And how do you feel about it, you know? What was that?
He's a little something.
Yeah, he might have been a while ago on my knee.
A yellow
What is he?
tiger weirdness thing.
Yeah, interesting little beetle.
Do you want
Maybe you could
Send him
make it-
outside, or-
Yeah. There we go.
Oh, he was cute.
I know, it's just me and the dog. It's like a little bit of
in the active imagination thinks of what that thing could do, because it looked very interesting.
It looked very what?
Interesting.
He's gone.
we lived in Hawaii where bugs was as big as your head. We got,
He was just giving you a little.
That's
That's
our
it. My incident was just something like that. I believe in the source and
Right.
the security stuff coming out.
Right.
And it translated to I believe in the spice, and it like pulled me right into the dune. You remember the dune?
Yes. Yes.
Spice.
Spice supplies life.
Yes, I remember that. Yes, oh yes.
I couldn't watch that movie because that whispering he'd do, the spice. It's like if he does that one more time, I'm gonna reach through the TV.
And I want you to be honest with yourself about this, you know. And when you're doing your time during the day or in the morning or whenever you have your time, be honest with the all in all about it. Talk to it just exactly like a person. It, like I like to say, you know, like in my song, that it's my forever friend. You know, it's my forever friend. I can tell anything to, and it will never reject me. It will never criticize me. It will never judge me. And like I said, I'm lucky. I told this to Beck at Becky's as a child, I had a mother that disciplined me. She was very strict. And when I got off on my path, I went to college and, smoking my pot, and drinking, because I grew up in a very strict Christian family. And she figured it out. I was letting my hair grow. I was getting long hair and all the hippie stuff. I wasn't really hippie, but I was getting into most of it. And I'd come home and she knew there was something going on just by the way I looked. But she sat me down and she said, "Your father and I do not agree with what you're doing." And then she said, "But I will always love you, and you will always be welcomed here. Always. I will always love you." And it just hit me. It was like, and so I had somebody in my life that portrayed what God's like. See, didn't judge me. Just said, "You can't do this in our house, and we don't agree with what you're doing. But I will always love you, and you will always be welcomed here." And like I said before, I wasn't doing any criminal thing except the pot. I guess it was against law. But I wasn't hurting anybody. I wasn't doing bad stuff as a rebel. It was more of the teenage rebellion, getting away from home and that strict environment type deal. But my point is that's what God's like. That's what the all in all is like. That there's never anything that we can do that can turn him or turn it off, or it's always flowing towards us with love and compassion and mercy to provide all our needs, just like we talked about before. What right now it's running the whole universe, making your heart beat, making all of it is for wholeness and to give and to provide. That's all it wants to do, in every area of our lives, and never ever judge us for it. And like I said before, the judgment comes, is built in the system. Like that chart says, if we go to the lower vibrations, that puts us in our own destruction. And we chose that. Now, somebody that loves you, guess what? It's going to give you a choice. We'd be robots, wouldn't we? It hit me. I used to think that there shouldn't be any evil. And then over the years I realized, oh my gosh, there has to be. If you don't have a free will, if there isn't a choice between good and evil. No, you don't have a free will.
You don't know how good is until you see the other.
And there's the other thing. It's a relative term. If Adam and Eve had never left paradise, they would never have known what paradise really was. You have no comparison. You have no contrast. That's why I would never want to raise a child in a perfect environment and protect them. My mother never protected me from anything. She had me experience and deal with it and learn from it. And when we have parents today that want to shelter and, not let anything, no, then what are you going to do when they get out there and they don't know how to deal with it? Because once they get out of your protection, they're on their own. And they won't know how to deal with it. See? So, yes, we have to have the contrast. So he's given us the ability to create good and bad, to, like I said, choose blessing or cursing, life and death. You choose. I've laid it out there for you. And so you touch the stove, don't touch it anymore. You'll learn if you touch it, don't touch it anymore. So the big thing for me is the emotions things. That our emotions are the key to all of this. It's everything. Your emotions are what are going to destroy you or heal you. It's really that simple. So the reprogramming and letting go of the other stuff. I was thinking about this again today. You want to get rid of your bad wiring, right? Are you with me on that? Have you agreed with where we've gone with that? You want to reprogram and get rid of that old wiring. And you do understand that none of that is you. Your a pure consciousness that's eternal. None of this is you. Okay? So yes, we want to get rid of that. So the point is, when we're dealing with that, I found out, this is what happened, this has just happened to me in the last month, and I think I've mentioned this before, kind of with the Facebook thing. But once I got turned on and excited again, and in the mornings I can't wait to get up. And I haven't felt that way in a few years. You know. And so I've been distracted with the world, I've been everything out here. But it's like now I can't wait and to get into my thing in the morning, because it's like transforming. It's like I'm connecting up and it's just crazy. It's all this stuff, and everything good is happening right now because of it. Well, you know what? I didn't try to stop Facebook. It just fell away. So the thing is, once you turn from one thing, like we're talking about the frontal lobes, to the other, they wither. Your neural circuits wither and they fall away. And you lose the addiction to all those other things. We're all going to be addicted to something. And whatever your wiring is, that's what you're going to be addicted to. Okay. Now, for example, the people that come and get addicted to these meetings, like I said earlier, what they don't realize is that your brain fights to keep your current homeostasis, your wiring. So it's fighting to pull you back, because that's what's strongest in you right now. Until you rewire, it's always going to be the force that pulls you back. But that's why you have to get up and say, okay, I'm going to get up every morning and do this. And then pretty soon you'll wake up and those wires won't be there anymore. That wiring won't be there anymore. It's not like you tried to disconnect. It's just changing your attention, changing your focus, like we talked about before. So, but all these other people, they're falling back into their homeostasis. But here's the positive about this. Once you rewire, see, now I'm not making myself get up. Do you follow me? I can't wait to get up and do this. And so I got a new brain. I'm a different person. Like Joe says, I'm literally, anytime you rewire in any way, you are a different person. Even Bashar taught that. He says, when you make one change of any type, you are different than you were before. Okay? So now that I'm rewired, my homeostasis has changed, and now my brain is fighting to do what? Keep this one. So it's actually a positive thing once you do your rewiring. It's like, oh my gosh, here you go. You've rewired. Now you're just on automatic pilot. You're always on automatic pilot, but now you've rewired your pilot, reprogrammed. All right. Let's see, the question I just asked you was, somebody tell me, what did I just ask you?
Oh, I was going to write it down. But
What do you believe your relationship is with God right now?
Yeah, that's what it was. And again, you all don't have trouble with nomenclature of what we call it, right? It doesn't matter, right? You can call it whatever you want, whatever's good for you. And like I said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the source what you call it. It can sense when you're putting your attention, no matter what you call it.
Call him Yo Dog. Yo Dog.
Yo
I don't know why
Dog.
that just came through.
Maybe he wants to be called that, I don't know.
Well, it's the year of the dog, so who knows?
Yeah. All right. Now, this one you may have already answered. Do you believe that it wants to communicate with you? How many of you already believe that? So you don't need to write anything down. Because some people don't believe that. And how does it communicate to you? Answer that question. How does the all in all communicate to you? In what ways? He's in his hammock.
Mm-hmm. I have to drive to Fort Wayne today.
To get a match. She wants to go to Fort Wayne to get
I
a
wanna get a
Maine Coon, where I got.
Oh, gosh.
I know Joe's got one too, I can find out from her where she got hers, if you want to.
Yeah, she definitely needs more cats.
Yes. One more isn't gonna hurt.
She's got 7.
It's okay.
All right. Now, I'm going to read this because this was like a download this morning. I was asking, and this doesn't happen very often, but I want you to listen carefully. That's why I didn't want to hand it out to you. I just want you to listen to the words. Kelly was telling me that, that I'm channeling at times. And I know when I am. I can tell. Becky's told me that too. She said, you get in a mode where you're channeling. And I said, yeah, it's because I'm actually listening to what I'm saying. It's like I'm hearing it for the first time. So it's like my consciousness is listening to what's coming through, So, and I'm always typing them up and I'm always running them off. I've got it for you. But now I want you to listen to this. This is kind of what I covered in summary earlier. This has to do with all your sources. And this came to me, it was like the All-in-All was speaking in first person. It wasn't me saying it about the All-in-All. It was literally saying this in first person. So, it says the field of all possibilities is the formable energy. You know what that means? Formable. Like clay. Yeah, okay. It's formable energy that molds to whatever will speak to you. Imagine a wall of energy surrounding you. Whatever you need me to manifest to you, whatever concept you have faith in, I will extend that concept out from the wave and from the wall. It's like saying, okay, wouldn't it best serve you to get it through concepts of angels? Okay, if you need to be spoken to by angels, I will speak through angels. Then I will use the concept, a book from a scientist, maybe. Then I will communicate through a manifestation of a being that's a terrestrial from another dimension, that you will believe what you're hearing is coming from me. See? Then I will speak through someone who is channeling, like Abraham Hicks. Or then I might speak through someone, or use someone who does Reiki to get you healed. In other words, all of these things, and he says right here, these are concepts. All of these are created concepts by you, not the source. You conjured up the concept of angels because you wanted something mystical, because you couldn't go directly to the source. You had to create a medium. And then, and you know why? It created what? Belief. I mean, if you had an angel appear to you, you definitely believe, wouldn't you, when it said something to you? But how many people, that's their only source, that's all they talk about? They're angels. What they don't understand is that's not God's creation. That's not. It was you needing that particular concept to hear what the higher mind had to say to you. So, okay, we'll go through that concept. Are you following what I'm trying to show you here? All right. Then he says, I'm not creating these, you are. You are so powerful that you are deciding and defining how I speak to you. All methods are valid, none are necessary. I know in the Bible, he spoke through a jackass. Remember that story? Spoke through a donkey.
Well, and I think that the way that the things that we choose are the way to help guide us towards the community and the friends and the family that will be our greatest people to help nurture our path, because they speak that same language.
Well, and that's the other thing. Yes. And you will have people that are going to have a unity in that, because they have that same belief system. But again, it's a belief system in a concept. None of it is absolutely necessary. Okay? Do you know what the word angel means from the Greek and Hebrew? Messenger. And you know what he said about you entertain angels unawares? You ever heard that scripture? Yeah, in the New Testament it says that. Well, that means it could be charity speaking to me, because she had a message for me from the source. And she may not even know she's the one delivering it. Are you following me? The source, out of this moldable energy, is popping up in whatever concept you need. Okay, you need that? Okay, I'll talk through that. Okay, you need that? I'll talk through that. I'll bring that out of the field of energy and mold that. So, because the whole point, the bottom line is, I want you to get the message. And so, whatever you believe in, I'll do that.
I believe in music gods
Yes.
a lot.
right.
Random is wonderful.
Now, but do not seek to stay with those concepts. When you do, you isolate. This was a big thing here, this whole paragraph. You isolate yourself on one island that is one of infinite number of islands. See them as bridges to oneness. Ways eventually you will not need, but leading you to a point that one day you will cross one of those bridges and realize that it's me. The whole time. And it will be all you will need. If you remove the bridges and the separateness you have created between the islands of all these sources. Okay, I lost it here. Yeah. They will come together as one, and then you will see the one all in all. And realized you are one with me. That you don't need a medium. You don't need created concepts as bridges to me that you think you need. It is only insecurity, fear, poor self-image, guilt that causes you to think that you need a medium between me and you. It's like the Old Testament. They needed a priest to go into the Holy of Holies. Remember that in the Old Testament? The priest had to go. Someone was designated to go. Okay. Now, but don't fret or judge because of where you are now, but at the same time, don't stay on any of those islands and concepts and become dependent. See them as bridges leading to the next, and the day will come, you cross and you see, beholding me as in a mirror with unveiled face, face to face. Do you remember the scripture I quoted at Becky's and was standing in front of the mirror? Paul said this. He said, with unveiled face, once you turn from the law put a veil over the faces. Once you turn from the law to the source, the veil is removed. And he says it's looking in a mirror and with unveiled face beholding the glory of God. and being transformed into God's image from glory to glory, from more oneness to more oneness. See? And my point is this, and what it's trying to say here. As long as you are looking to others for your source, you will get things. I'm not saying you're not going to get stuff. That's how I got where I am. It's all stepping stones. But they're not islands that you're stuck on forever. They're all connected. Every one of them are connected. And you should be looking to get to the point that where you have so much confidence, so much oneness with the Creator, that you can wake up in the morning and ask a question and you know the answer's coming. You know the answer's coming. No doubt. Now, and you can get a direct download. It speaks right to you immediately. It speaks to you all day. Wouldn't you like to be there? Wouldn't you like to be where you heard the Creator's voice 24 hours, 24/7? Now, how do you get that way? Well, remember what I told you Jesus did every morning? He had to do that because he was in a human body with a brain. He was in the same situation we were, but he had to do that every morning, get his connection, and then he'd go out throughout the day like that. All right. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about too, I think that was the last question I had. Make sure on this. Yes. Now, I want your comments on this. What do you think? What is this? Does this say anything to you at all? How do you feel about it? You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I'm just wanting you to share your thoughts if you want.
Feel about what?
For me, I have believed all this pretty much in line with this for a long time, since I was probably in my 20s and started reading stuff like this, and I think over the years gotten better and better, and I've always believed that we're completely connected to Source all the time, but that it's all our fears that basically separate us from that Source. And I've got certain tools and things that I use, and we do a lot of stuff that we kind of practice together at trying to reduce those fears. But that's the hard part for me, is like how do you really get those?
Well,
because I have to practice, like every day I have to practice.
What are your fears? Can you name one? Do you mind naming? You don't have to, but do you mind naming one?
Well, fears about money, or like some mornings I'll wake up and I'll feel worried about something with my company or whatever. And
Now, do you own your own company?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
so I'll wake up and maybe my first thoughts will be, oh shit, that investor didn't come through.
Right.
And then
All right. You know what
dominoing.
your answer is right away to that?
Gratitude.
No. Right. Well,
Like,
yeah. I know that's the pat answer that we've given, but I want you to think about what you said again about the investor or the source. Say that again.
Which,
Oh, shit.
You said, yeah. You said, oh shit.
yeah.
My brother.
This
Didn't come through.
did not. Okay, and I want you to listen to this. You know what I heard there? That investor's your source. Weren't you saying that your attention and energy and dependence was on an investor?
This is in the past.
Yes, but do you understand what I'm saying? So the moment you hear that, see, I'm trained enough up here now, I'm thinking, when I say those fears, I still have them because of wiring I'm getting rid of. Do you remember my analogy of turning your frontal lobes, on that chart? Okay, that was turning to your ego side, matter and changing matter. Dependence upon systems. All right, so the moment you hear that, you should program yourself, what? No, I'm not giving that energy anymore. You're my source. Immediately speak one-on-one, person to person with the source. And apologize. I'm sorry. You're my source, not my investor. And I'm thankful for that. That you provide. I would go into this whole speech. You provide all my needs because we're one. That's all you want to do for me. You prosper me in every. That's when you start your Thanksgiving rant in the other direction.
Right.
Immediately. So every one of those fears, when they come up, they are defining that you've changed. You see that as a source instead of the real source. And that's the method you use. And the more often you do it, one day, that will be gone. That neural circuit that's in your head will wither away.
And that's what I generally try to do, is just go, the reason I said gratitude is because I'll try to go.
No, you're right about that, yeah.
To saying, you know what, I mean, there's a reason that that investor didn't come through, and everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And, you know, that.
Yes, and that's another way of saying
Tuning
it.
into gratitude and saying, you know what, it's all exactly the way it's supposed to be.
That's exactly right.
And the more I trust that, why am I worried about that one?
Right.
You know, that's kind of.
But that's your, yeah. So you were doing the right thing then. The way you did it's the same thing. That's the same thing.
Something quick I go into is I'll say equal or better. And I'll go, oh yeah, you've got this, and I know that you've got equal or better on its way.
Yes.
You know, and it's just, and then I get to go, oh, okay. Back
And
to
that's really good. It's all, in fact, 9 times out of 10, it's always better.
Yeah.
It's
Dad's famous words were, wasn't meant to be. Move on.
yeah.
That one wasn't meant to be your
Right.
investor. Somebody else is equal or better.
And
Not good enough.
Right.
and you see
Well,
it
that's
as
why I like
almost
people
like
that.
they did you a favor. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
They did you a favor. You know.
So I try to do, I guess what, and sort of going back to your first question, for me, a group like this would be trying to get better at that, because
Right.
I've been practicing that for a long time. And we do that together, we talk about our fears together.
And that's good too, because sometimes you can hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
When you may be in a circuit, it's like Joe says, you can't change your circuits while you're in your circuits. You can't change your programming while you're in the program. And you may be caught up in that, and it may take her, and vice versa.
Going, stop.
Yeah, which is a good thing, you know. And then it pulls you out, and then you can change your direction.
It takes, the way I look at it, it takes, when you say something out loud, when you have a fear and you say it out loud, it takes a lot of power away from it. And it just, every time you say it out loud, it kind of shrinks it. And then you start to go, wait a minute, that's not real. Every time it
That's
pops
right.
up again. So.
Well, you're on the right track then. That's the way I learned it, and the way Joe talks about it. You know, that's getting in the frontal lobe and observing yourself, or not yourself, but observing your programming, and analyzing it, and then changing direction. Yeah, that's the formula. I mean, that's the formula. You know, anybody else have anything they were want to share about all that?
Well, I just wanted to say some little thing because it does tie in with the healing intention group. But his mom actually ended up at the hospital the other day with chest pains, and so he was on the. She actually normally they're in bed by 5, 6 o'clock.
Oh, really?
But when she was at the hospital waiting for all these tests, she called at like 9:30, 10:30.
10:30.
Yeah, and
I
so.
called Charity, not me.
Well, she called you before that, and then later on she called me, and I'm like, but so we were talking, and you know, he was talking, and she talks more than Mom, me, and Grandma put together, and she's just going on, and I'm like, So I was like, keep talking to her and keep her on the phone. And so I went and grabbed my lavender, and I was like, just smell this. And so I had him smelling the lavender. I sent it to your mom. And then I had my hand over his heart chakra, and I was like sending in all kinds of good energy. And I'm like, okay, just take it. You know, and so we were both intentioning through the phone to his mom. And they had come up with some things that they thought it might have been. Next day, clear, you know, heart cath and everything, and no, she's clear as a whistle. And I was like, of course she was. That's been my thing. Of course she did. Of course.
In other words, you weren't surprised.
Like, I had faith, you know. It's like we worked on it last night. We tapped into her and helped her heal, you know.
Well, and that's I'm going to bring up one thing we talked about at Becky's that I got extremely excited about. I was on cloud nine at Becky's, but it was like, oh my gosh, and it was about the emotion thing. And I want to tell you all that weren't there. Kelly was there, so she's heard this. I can go ahead and tell it. But remember the example I told you about Dr. Lipton's taking cells from someone and separating them 40 miles away? Did we talk about that? And then they'd pull up a picture and show the person this picture, and it would generate an emotion, okay, or create a response. Well, instantaneously they had instruments to measure, and the cells 40 miles away reacted. I mean, with a charge, an electrical charge, right, simultaneously. We're talking about 40 miles away. Well, then it hit me. We live in a reality that is bound by the speed of light. Once you break the speed of light, Einstein proved this, you've broken the barrier and you become energy, no longer physical. And that's that field that we're talking about. So it hit me, I thought, so that's how you enter the field. What went into the field when they looked at the picture?
Intention.
No, not totally. Emotion. The picture's not the energy, is it? What's the energy? It's the response to the picture, isn't it? And wasn't that response instantaneous 40 miles away? Well, that means it left the 3D dimensional realm, because it would have to travel to get there in this realm. It couldn't be instantaneous in this realm. Are you following what I'm saying here? So that means the way you enter that realm to change things is with emotion. Your emotion goes into the quantum wave immediately, and it is instantaneous. And you know what the quantum wave is? It is omnipresent. So guess what? Your emotion becomes instantly what? Omnipresent. And the electrical charge, the electrical is the information. So the picture is the information. You generate that in your brain. It reflects into your brain. You see the picture. So that's the information is electromagnetic, is the energy of the emotion. All right. So then it hit me about how to create. You have billions of neurons sitting there doing nothing right now. And like I said before, most of us are firing the same ones over and over every day. Right? 95% of the time, the public's in that programming firing less than 1% of what reality is. Same stuff over and over again. So, the moment you change your energy of your fear for that investor, and okay, I'm going to take a neuron, I'm going to create a new reality. And I'm going to imagine myself and see a picture with information of prospering and my business going crazy. Just, people coming everywhere. These investors are coming, the right people, and you start seeing it, like the picture that they saw when they had the emotion. And then it generates the emotion of prosperity. It generates the emotion of you're thankful that this is happening. Okay, and where does that emotion go? Into the field of all possibilities. Remember, we just gave an example. The emotion goes directly in. And it carries the information with it that you're picturing and pulls the particles out and comes back in like it did 40 miles down the road.
So it's kind of like manifesting.
Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is, see. The moment you have an emotion with a picture or an ideal or a vision, it is gone into the field with the emotion. Do you see why emotion is so important? That one experiment says it all. Because you have to be in the oneness field to be simultaneously everywhere. And that's what you were doing for his mother. Weren't you sending emotion, and you had the information of what? Healing, and you were seeing her probably, I don't know what all you did. And she was, but again, it's not just praying, oh dear God, if it's your will, please heal so and so. That's how people pray. And you know what they put at the end? It's the safety catch in case it doesn't work. If it's your will. That way, if they don't get healed, it doesn't put a bad light on God that didn't do it. You know, or it must not have been your will. That is the stupidest thing that religion has taught anyone.
So that part of that prayer is not, thy will be done? Is that?
But do you know what his will is, though?
Yeah.
His will is for it to be healed.
Right.
There's no question as to whether they're to be healed or not.
Okay.
That means that person doesn't know God. What is God? What would the energy of God do to anybody?
Perfectness.
Make it whole. Yes, He is wholeness, and that a product of wholeness is to make whole.
And the path to wholeness is to realize your programming that you need to let go of so that you can release the veils and get closer.
That's right. So, yeah, see, I know God's will. There's no question about that. You know what Paul said? I pray that you be wholly sanctified, spirit, soul, and body, that you may be preserved, complete, and he even says, and well, healthy. Sounds like God's will to me. Why would he be asking you to pray for your spirit, soul, and body to be whole and healed and healthy? The word there is sozo again in the Greek, which means healed, and it's the same word that says saved throughout the Bible. And so, yeah, oh yeah. God. See, that's all God is. There isn't one thing that God isn't good. Remember, who chooses the bad? Remember? He's given us the choice. He's healing. He's prosperity. He's life. He's love. He's all the positive fruits of the Spirit, and all of that has a positive effect on this body, which is the last thing to experience it. See? You have to experience it first up here and with an emotion. That goes into the field, see? And you're created. Now here's the other cool thing about this. I don't think we've talked about completely, but I did at Becky's. But right now there are tons of signals going through this room right now. Radio signals, television signals, and all we need is a what? An antenna. And don't you turn the dial to pick a certain frequency. See? Well, that's your brain is where your neurons and dendrites and synapses are your antennas. And right now, the ones that are already in there are the only thing that you can pick out of the field. Because science has said this. Our synapses literally take energy from the quantum field and make it physical material. Now we have an example of that in nature. What do trees do? What do the leaves do on trees? You ever heard of photosynthesis? Didn't you learn that in high school? Well, anyway.
Because they don't eat leaves.
No, but think about this.
They like.
It's just pure light energy, and this leaf is catching it and turning it into chlorophyll, a physical substance. So there's your example of what's going in here, because remember what your nerve circuits look like? Have you ever seen them? They look like trees. And if you pull a tree out, you know how a tree has roots, and that's what your neural circuits look like. You have an axon, and then you have dendrites that are the roots in and they're, at the end of those are the antennas. So, when you turn and say, now I'm going to see and have this emotion about abundance, and my investors are the right ones coming in and you get excited about it. Jump and walk. You should be literally, physically running around, jumping up and down. I mean, if you stood up right now and do, wow, do it right now. I'm serious. Get up right now. Wow. No, I mean it. It's like, wow. Or yes, yes. But I'm telling you, did you not feel something?
Sure.
Yep.
I'm vibrating.
All right, now you can sit down. Now you can sit down.
She might be pissed about wake her up.
All right.
Yeah, you got
But-
to make sure you do it downstairs.
But I'm saying, when you do
not in
that,
bed.
did you not feel it?
Yes.
This is how you do it on purpose. See? And when you have, did you get excited, Aspen?
His ears.
There are studies that show that the chemicals in your body, that if you this and this, when you do this, it creates the chemicals in your body that make you feel good.
Oh, gosh.
And people
See,
say, yeah.
What? See, does
right.
anybody know where you see this all the time?
Yeah.
Where?
Church.
Church, charismatic churches.
Pictures of me
You know
at
what?
the beach.
You know what David said in the Psalms? Lift your heads, O gates, and raise your hands. He's calling you a gate. Guess what? What for?
Anything.
You're the gate for God to come through. See, when you do, you lift your heads, O gates. You're the gates allowing this energy of God to come. So I just got goosebumps again doing it. Just, what are trees doing with their limbs?
And if they can't get enough sunlight, what do?
They go down. That's right.
They move to where they can.
Oh yeah, you're right. They move to where they can find it. Exactly. Now, think about it. So, the moment you do that with your intention, your clear picture of what you want to create, all right, jump up and down and see it. Where have you sent your emotion? Into the quantum of possibilities, and you set that information in there, right? Now, do you know what happened physically in your brain? As soon as you saw the new picture, had the emotion, and jumped up and down, your neurons are like little seeds. They're balled up like little seeds. As soon as you did that, it sprouted. Physically, your brain changed. And shot up an axon and dendrites. And if you do that every day, it fully develops, and then it starts hooking on to other neurons. And it starts becoming your new neural nets. The new you. You literally physically change your brain when you do that. Now, what did I tell you isn't that the antenna that pulls it out? So see, now you've got the information. You have to have information to make a new neuron. And that's where you hold the information in the picture. And the emotion is what creates the electrical energy through the neuron. So now you're sending out a signal. You're a transducer. Oh my gosh, this was another thing I got excited about. I was reading Joe last night. He said 3 more things that I had already said. He said the brain was a transducer. You know what transducer means? Transducer gives and receives energy. Both ways. So that's what your brain does, see. Your brain, I've said that before, I knew it did, and then Joe says, yes, your brain is a transducer. Then he said, oh my goodness, you remember when I said, Jesus said, if your eye is clear, your body will be full of light? He quoted the scripture. It's like he's quoting all these, and I hadn't heard him say any of those things. And I thought, man, this is like so much confirmation, and it's just fallen into place with it. So, that's how you pull the information out. All these possibilities, you're creating the possibility. Now here's the other thing. Do you know there's nothing that you can't imagine that doesn't already exist? There's nothing you can imagine. There's nothing you can't imagine that doesn't already exist. Everything, absolutely everything, is already in existence. Right, and it's all now.
Because we're living in the past.
That's right. That was a biggie, wasn't it? The thing about the past being out here and the past in your old circuits. And now you're creating a new neural circuit so you can do the holographic projection out into this realm. And the last thing that experiences your projection is your senses. See? That's why Paul said, don't rely on things that you see. Don't trust what you see. It's the unseen. See? So that's your method. You know, that's what you do. And you got a billion of them in there. You got billions of neurons that are just sitting there waiting for you to create anything you want. Think about that. I'm serious. Anything you desire. Now let me ask you this question. Let's remove some old stuff that's bad. I got to thinking about this. You know, some people think, like my best friend John, Papa John. You know, he just hit $1 billion not too long ago, worth $1 billion. And I'll hear people say, well, that's just a waste. You know, that's just, you know, why would someone want to accumulate that much wealth? And why would they, you know? And he lives extravagantly. You know, I've ridden on his helicopter, his private jet. You know, that flashy stuff doesn't do anything for me. I mean, yeah, I enjoy doing it. Anybody would enjoy doing it, but it doesn't impress me. Not anymore. It used to maybe 20, 30 years ago, but it doesn't impress me. But you know how people will say, that's just a crime. And I thought, okay, they're thinking from the 3D material world. Because I got to think about it. Now, wait a minute. If I'm hooked up to the Creator, the Source, $800 billion or $1 billion is nothing to him. Right? I mean, think about it. Isn't it nothing? I mean, it's minuscule. He's creating planets. $1 billion. That's even, and anyway, that's just a created concept. Money's just a created freaking concept. That's not where real wealth is. See, that's the other thing you got to change. Wealth is not in currency.
Numbers.
It's in the source, and it's infinite. So if I have an infinite amount of what's $1 billion? That's not extravagant. I got to think about it. If your mind is in the right place, $1 billion is, I can give that as a tip. If you're talking about God, wouldn't he? I mean, couldn't he just? There you go.
Well,
Because you're a creator. You're a creator, which means what? I'll create some more. Joe even tells about a friend of his that was a multimillionaire. I don't know if you've heard him tell this story. He said, yeah, he sat down with me for lunch, and he said he ordered his food, and Joe, I asked him, he said, well, how you doing? Let's say his name's Paul. I said, how you doing, Paul? He says, well, I just lost everything, went broke. He said, can I get a cup of coffee with this pie? And he just went on, like nothing happened. And Joe goes, well, aren't you upset? Aren't you worried? He goes, no, I can do that again. I'll do it again. And see, that's the attitude. See, seeing limit is where is your frontal lobes focused? Where's your attention focused when you see limits? The physical, the matter world. That's the created effect. No wonder you're seeing limits. And it's less than 1% of the created universe that you're saying you're dependent on.
limits that were created by people that didn't have dreams big enough.
So, I'll tell you the rewiring I'm doing is that I can give I don't have to worry about anything. I can give $1 billion tip. Hey, God, And you know what? It's not wasteful. If your source is what? Infinite? Is it wasteful? No. So you need to change that attitude. There is no such thing as, now I can't think of the word, lack or sparseness or anything like that. There isn't. Unless you're operating in physical laws. Yeah, if you're operating in physical laws, there are. Because you do run out of stuff, don't you? In the physical. And that's where people's dependency is. That's where their focused energy is. See? But if you're focused on the Creator, you can create anything you want. You don't even need money to create it. Think about that. I think money is limiting. people in their minds from creating, because they think that's how you do it. Well, if I want to build something, I got to acquire the money to do it, or get an investor, right? But see, if that's your source, and if you think that's the way to get it, you've limited God to that. You've limited the Creator to that one way of doing it. See? And it's unlimited. So if you can open your eyes and think, here's what you do. You create the passion and the picture and the vision, and you say, okay, I want it your way, because I know it's the best way. I'm not even going to try to figure it out. And you should never try to figure it out. You know where you go when you try to figure it out? To your left analytical brain. And you're limited to whatever you've learned in your left brain. Think about that. So if you're using your left brain to try to figure it out by looking out here in the past and your past wiring, you're way behind. See?
Left brain is work, right brain is magic.
And there's some work together. So the right brain sees the images, and the lower limbic region gives you the emotion, and then it comes to the left brain for implementation. See? The left brain is important, but it's to be the servant, not the master. So, are you following? Is this making any sense? Is it making any sense at all? That's why I get up and dance in the morning. Now, here's what I want you to do. This came to me when I was teaching the seminar on the brain. Do any of you have relatives that used to keep a diary? Nobody does that anymore. Like, I had an aunt, my dad's sister. She never married. She was a 6th grade teacher, became a principal, and she was a stewardess with my dad's cousin, Orville Nelson. Had his own airline. So she was a stewardess and traveled the world. And it's like she went everywhere. And I just lost my thought. What did I say just before? Diary. Okay. She kept this diary, and I wish I'd have done that. I thought how cool it was. She literally every day, at the end of the day, wrote everything that happened. Now think about if you could go back 30 years in your life and literally read what you did on January 1st of that year. Wouldn't that be cool to be able to just... Because you don't remember it.
I've done it for like 15 years.
You have? You have a diary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Diary.
See, I don't do it.
It doesn't have as much emotion as I probably should put it in, like cool stuff. It's a lot more, but yeah, I've done it.
But it was cool because she traveled in this airline. Orville Nelson had this airline. He developed a throne for the Shah of Iran so that it would rotate and always face the east in the airplane for the Shah. This was his private airplane, the Shah of and she was a student. And then I come to find out later, of course, she tells. In fact, that she did so much travel. Is that camel stool or a camel saddle behind you? That's a camel saddle. That's from Egypt. She gave me that camel saddle, and
That's what that is.
yep. And so she has all her travels in there. You know, she has all of that stuff. But here's what I came up with though. But see, that's past tense though, isn't it? See, when you write a diary of what's happened during the day, that's past tense, right? Okay. Well, here's my idea, and this is what I do. When I go to bed at night, instead of writing a diary of what happened today, can you guess what I'm going to say?
You're right, what you want to happen tomorrow.
Exactly. I write a future diary. And writing, I'm not talking, and you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't type it into a phone. You shouldn't just do it in your head. Writing down things, you'd be amazed what that does in the brain. It creates the circuits much faster when you write at the same time. Because guess what you're doing? You're doing the kinesthetic motion of it. You're using your body. Okay. So you need to write it visualize it, do it with emotion.
Announce it
Yep.
to someone else.
And here's the other thing. The theta state happens right before you go to sleep at night. Do you know what the theta state is for? That's when your conscious drops into your subconscious. Whatever in your conscious drops to the subconscious. So the last thing you're thinking about will drop into your and reprogram you.
What's
So-
that word you used again?
Theta?
Faith?
Faith.
Faith.
Tap the top of it. There you go.
T-H-E-T-A.
Theta. The theta state. TA. Yeah. The theta state is what brings you in a state where you can be hypnotized. Suggestion. See, it's theta's right before delta. Alpha, theta, and then delta. Alpha is really relaxed. Theta's the dream where you start to enter that realm where your body's asleep but you're still a little bit awake. But it's proven that if you, whatever you think about right before you go to bed, will drop into your consciousness. Then, you're not done. When you get up in the morning, you go back through that theta state again. You go from delta, which means you're coming out of your deep sleep, back up to theta, to alpha, to beta. Now, I don't know if this has happened to you, but it's happened to me a lot. Have you ever thought about something that you wanted to figure out or had a question about and wonder how, this or that? You wake up the next morning, you get in the shower, and
I do that all the time.
that's because your question, your subconscious doesn't sleep at night. Your conscious brain does. So it actually works on answering that question for you. So when you do that, get up in the morning, reread what you wrote the night before. Again. Celebrate it, get the emotion, and you may be shocked and go, oh my gosh, here's something I could do.
So
See?
what happens to you when you stop doing that? Because that's what I used to do. And I stopped.
It doesn't-
It's like everything that I ever wanted, I couldn't think of anything else.
You mean you have what you want? Or is
Yeah,
that-
so then I
Well, but
stopped dreaming, and then,
what about, so you have, right now there's nothing you want in life.
oh, there's a lot of things I want in life.
Well, there you go.
I'm just thinking about the wrong things, visualizing the wrong things.
Well, that's what you've got to change. But see, the writing of it will take your mind off of those other things. You see what I mean? If you're putting your attention to writing it, you can't get a distraction as easily.
There was a reason that teachers made you write things over and over and over again whenever you were little, because it helps instill those things, like he said, kinetically, but also it's like that repetitive, like they say you do repeat something 3 times and it's really got it. It's kind of like you're saying it once for body, once for mind, one for spirit is kind of what I tell myself.
And again,
so if you can write things, then you're probably thinking it, speaking it, and writing it. So you're also creating that, solidifying.
yes, you're actually in the
Motion in it.
yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
I know what I'm supposed to do, I just stop doing it.
You're actually in the theta state when you're driving sometimes. Have you ever driven somewhere and got there and thought, I didn't even pay attention the whole time?
I hope I stopped at that stop sign.
But because you've driven that so many,
Past 15 miles ago.
but if you've driven it that so much, you were in your autopilot. You were okay. So you were in the autopilot.
How to get in the ditch.
So another thing I realized was you could be playing, if you wanted to record your voice with all these things you want to create, put it on a DVD or on a CD or something and put it in your car and listen to it while you're driving. See, because while you're driving, you'll enter that theta state and you don't have to be paying attention to what's being said. If you're in the theta, it drops in. See. Do you know what the Bible, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you know what the Bible says how faith comes? It's in Romans. Faith comes by hearing. No, faith comes by hearing.
By seeing or hearing.
Yes. And if you keep hearing, Jesus even said, be careful what you hear. The measure you give to it is the measure you will receive in return.
It's like repetitive negative
Yep,
comments.
exactly.
That
It's the same
Negative
thing.
music.
Anything.
No.
If
Negative.
you are giving your attention and hearing it, aren't you giving your power or energy to it? See? He said, be careful what you hear. And faith, remember I mentioned Kenneth Copeland earlier who taught me faith? Back in the day when I was still he was the one that taught me. It says it in Romans, faith comes by hearing. And hearing by the word, which means you speak it. How did God create? See. And in Hebrews it says he framed the world in words. And that word world there actually means the galaxies in three-dimensional reality. He framed it in words. Well, what did the guy see, or what did the person see that gave him an emotion? A picture. See, so
I'm sorry, I just got.
did you get an insight?
Well, yeah, okay,
Ding,
That's
ding,
good,
ding, ding,
good.
ding.
Very good.
walk by faith, not by sight. Sight is one of the five senses. That means you're in your programming.
That's right.
So he was talking about you're in your programming. But when you're walking by faith, you're not in your programming.
No.
Son of a bitch.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
It's all the way they say it that doesn't make sense
No.
unless you got other things
Yeah.
to put with it.
But doesn't it make sense
They
though?
only give you this little bit, and then they expect you to grasp all that.
Yeah.
I just got goosebumps again. Maybe it's your goosebumps.
I
Does
feel
it-
like I'm in a like my face is numb kind of thing, you know?
Well, you know what happened? I'll tell you exactly what happened physically. Joe talked about when you have these insights, the what's
Kundalini.
Kundalini energy goes from here up your spine and literally hits your pineal gland. And that's what it has fluorescence in it.
It's making me misty even.
It's-
This is
yeah.
really cool.
It has fluorescence in it like the things in the animals and bugs in the earth have that glow, like the eel. It's the same stuff, and it literally lights up. The experience you just had.
So you got a lightning bug in there?
Yeah, it's like that. It's like that. And that's what he said.
Plankton.
That's what he said about being full. If your eyes clear, your body will be full of light. It's the physical of what what you're experiencing. And see, that's what happens to me when I get these insights. It's like, whoa, and if we could have taken a picture of your brain when that happened,
It lit up.
yeah. And it was in complete sync. It wasn't the left back here or the front up here.
Oh,
It was the
I
whole,
like that.
it's the whole brain in sync. And this is see, I love it when this happens. This is what's supposed to happen right here, is you start getting these, and you know what else? Physically, your brain, a Hibbean connection went from one neural net that you had some knowledge about and connected. I mean, you made a connection, see. Did you hear yourself make the connection? What did you say? Faith not by sight. So you literally had a physical wiring happen. Literally, your brain changed physically. And you know what else? You know what else? It's permanent.
Yes.
It's permanent. This is what's cool in the Bible. Do you know it says that in the Old Testament they would carry the scrolls on boxes on their foreheads? Did you know that? And it was a symbol thing. And on their wrists. They would carry them around. And so the New Testament he said, no, I want you to write my laws upon your heart. Inside. She just wrote it inside, see. So it happens inside. Then you're not the same person anymore. Remember how I said earlier, if any part of your brain changes like that, it's like Paul on the Damascus Road experience. Remember that? When he saw the bright light? He was Saul. See, I always thought that's kind of cool. See, that's what Joe's talking about, becoming another person. That's what happened to Saul. Saul became Paul. You know, and I'm wondering, should we change our names? Because the Hebrews, they do that. They change when they change their nature. They change their names. You know, when it says in the Bible to bless the Lord, bless the name of the Lord. You know what that really means? I never knew this until maybe 10 years ago, and I grew up saying it in church, and you sing it. Well, in the Hebrew background of that, the name really meant the nature of that being. What they were called. Remember how Abraham went from Abram to Abraham. He changed his name too, and it was Sarai to Sarah. See, but their nature changed. So I'm thinking, okay, this is how you bless the name of the Lord. What is God like? He's a provider. He's a healer. He's a creator. So really when I'm blessing the name of the Lord, I'm blessing what He is. Not just saying bless the Lord. So you're appreciating what He is and His nature and what He does for you. And that's the appreciation thing. You remember that chart? So when you show appreciation and thanksgiving for God, it's not just to say, praise God. No, that doesn't do anything. You're praising and setting in motion His nature to do His stuff for you. Because you're acknowledging it, see? That's why it says, Lord's Prayer. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy nature, what you are. And now let's bring that will from, what your will, not my will, but will from heaven to earth. Thy will be done, your nature come down to earth now. See, that's what Jesus was praying and trying to... See, we had no idea what the Lord's Prayer was saying. We just quote it, say it all together, and think it does something. Nothing. It's dead. Unless you understand and do it with the real emotion of appreciation to the Creator. Okay, thy will be done. And then he said, you know, what's the rest of it say?
Well,
Give us... Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's like I told Mom and Dad, that's one reason why I quit going to Catholic church, is because it just seems like
It's a dead,
a revolving ritual.
It's a dead ritual.
It's
a dead ritual.
It's just revolving.
Sometimes tradition is okay if you need it
Right.
just to meditate.
Right.
I spend my hour just.
You know, you got great support, don't get me wrong, but
Place
whenever
to
you're in search or you're looking for more or whatever, it's just a dead end. You know, it just
You've
doesn't-
graduated from church, is
Right.
what a lot of people
Well,
said
remember what I
saying
said
to me lately.
Yeah, remember what I said about the islands. See, yeah, God can work through anything. But that instrument that He's working through He can only work through it as much as that instrument allows Him. And I'm telling you, religion, period, is limited. All of them are limited. Because, and I was telling this to, I don't know if I told you all this, I did it at Becky's. In 1 John, or 1 Corinthians, very beginning, Paul says this. About blew my mind when I really saw it. He says, some of you say I'm of Cephas, which is Peter. Some say I'm of Paul. Some say I am of Christ. And then he says, is the body divided? Isn't that like islands? See? Is the body divided? And I thought, but he even said of Christ. What's wrong with saying of Christ? And then it hit me. Because when you say that, it's with the attitude of being separate. See? You're separating yourself still from everyone. And then he goes on to say, he says, you are babes, you're carnal, you're fleshly. Uh-oh, that sounds like the programming. That sounds like you're in your material, physical program. He says, I can't give you meat, I have to give you milk. Okay? Now, let's go through the rest of this book now. In one of the chapters, he talks about the communion, when they take communion. He says, some of you here are weak, sick, and dying because you're not rightly discerning the body. And what was his initial point? Separate. You're pulling apart. He says you're backbiting. I'm quoting literally here. It says you're backbiting and devouring one another. Because some say I'm of this. Some say I'm of that. And then they get jealous and our way is the right way. No, we got the right way. You got to do it this way. You got to immerse when you baptize. You can't sprinkle.
You don't even need water.
But do you see my point though? So Paul's...
Reading every Sunday.
Yeah, Paul's making a point here, and did you hear what he said? Some of you are weak and sick and dying because you're doing this. All right, then he goes to the 11th chapter and he describes the body. He says, can the hand say to the foot, I have no need of you? And he talks about the oneness of the body. And see, what we're talking about here is oneness right here. See? And so he goes on to say that the gifts of the Spirit in chapter 12. He says, some among you, he says there are prophets, there are gifts of prophecy, there are gifts of words of wisdom, there are gifts of healing. There are like 12 gifts. I can't remember all of them. And you know what he's saying? Those gifts can't work for you because you're not one. If the body's not one, how could the blood flow through it? See, how could the gifts flow through it? Because you're separate. You're carnal. You're fleshly. You're devouring one another. Then, and I got to read this to you. Then what comes after the 12th chapter in 1 Corinthians? What comes after 12? 13. Now you all should know what 13th chapter of Corinthians is. No?
Catholics don't know the Bible.
No.
I know it, I just don't know it's the 13th
All right.
chapter.
We were given one for confirmation, but other than that, I don't think we opened the Bible.
I forgot where my chapters
All
are.
right, now listen. Because you've all heard it though.
Yeah.
It's the love chapter.
Love is
13.
patient.
Love is patient. Love is kind.
Love is not
All right.
jealous.
Does not boast, it does
And
not
now, do you
envy,
see how he was
forgives.
still going back to what they were doing in the first chapter? You're jealous. You're backbiting one another. You're da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps again. It was like when I read that whole book. You know, one of the things wrong in the whole Bible thing that has caused misunderstanding and not knowing what's there? The chapter and verse. Because what do people do? They pull out, separate just the chapter and verse. And they don't see the whole message because they just do the chapter and verse thing. But if you read that whole thing,
To their convenience.
And detriment.
and now think about it again. Aren't we talking about wholeness and separateness again? And we love to do that stuff. I don't know why humans love to separate stuff. Start to say shit. All right. But here's what it says. I want you to listen to this. Now this is the nature, that when I talk about praising God's name, this is His nature that we're talking about here. God is love. And anyone who abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. So this is what His nature is. It says, love is patient. Love is kind. It is not jealous. Love does not brag. It is not arrogant, and it doesn't act unbecomingly. Doesn't seek its own way. It is not provoked. Oh, no buttons to be pushed. Programming. See?
Keeps no records of wrong.
No. Does not take that's next. She knows it. Does not take into account a wrong suffered. Does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. Now listen to this. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never fails. So I don't think God ever fails, so I think it's God's will to always win. If God is love, right? It's always, the good stuff is supposed to happen. Okay. Now listen to this. Now the next scripture though says, now just before this he had listed all the gifts. Remember I told you about the gifts? Like prophecy. Okay, I'm going to read them off here. Now listen to this. It says, but if there are gifts of prophecy, they will pass away. If there are gifts of speaking in tongues, they will cease. If there's knowledge, it will be done away with. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. Now think about that. Wasn't that what they were in the beginning of the book? Weren't they in parts? See, they were in parts. And he'll tell you what can happen here. This is amazing. This is just amazing how this works out. But when the perfect comes, the partial will be done away with. In other words, when the mature, the word perfect there means mature. Weren't they being immature? Now let me also throw something in here. Didn't he say at the beginning, I can't give you anything but milk because you're carnal? So all those gifts of healing, prophecy, words of knowledge, tongues, that's milk. Why would he teach something that wasn't milk after he said, I can't give you anything but milk? So he's saying this is just milk. This isn't even not the best stuff here. And we're talking about us being together here and Kelly having, because Kelly has this, you said she has insights for you that she'll, well, that's what the Bible was describing as a word of wisdom for someone. And the gift is not Kelly's gift of having that gift of wisdom. It's the gift of God's Spirit through her giving wisdom to some. The gift is the word from God, not the person it's coming through. And see, Christians were doing that. So, well, yeah, I got the gift of knowledge. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, but the chapter says that love does not boast. So anyway, that kind of validated all that. And then the word of wisdom probably stopped coming to that person. All right, but now here's the part. It says, when the perfect comes, listen to this. The partial will be done away with. But we know in part, and see, aren't we that way right now? Don't we know partial knowledge right now? We don't know all. We're kind of in the state right now of knowing parts and different parts of it. But then he says this. Now I want to see if you get the reference. He says, but when everybody's heard this scripture. When I was a child, I'd speak as a child. Remember that? Mm-hmm. I would reason like a child. What did he call them in the first chapter? Babes, children. See, he's still referring to that. See, when you were a child, you reasoned like a child, you spoke like a child. And that means you know things in part. Because you're separating, see, you're doing all this stuff. So you can only know partial things. But then what's he say after that? But when I become a man, and that word in the Greek really means when I become mature. Which means you're not childish anymore like the first chapter. You're not being a child anymore. When I become mature. And of course, isn't it the love described the maturity, didn't it? What love is the maturity. But he says, when I become a man or mature, I did away with childish things. So again, isn't he referring to the backbiting and the jealousy and the separateness? And he says, for now we see in a mirror dimly. Remember I was talking about seeing in the mirror and seeing God? Right now we're kind of dim and seeing God in us. See? Does that make sense? See? You're still growing up. You're still maturing. Right now we see dimly or partially. But we will then see face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, just as I have been known. So in other words, you will know just like God knows.
We'll
remember
download
early?
and channel.
Yeah. Remember earlier? What did I say? My goal was to get to. What was my goal at the beginning? We were talking about to get to God without all the prophecy and the word of knowledge from somebody else, they're knowing in part there. Are you following me? That's the islands from the channeling, and the islands from this person, or getting teachings from this person. Yes, when you're a babe, you need all these sources. But eventually, you're supposed to grow up and see in a mirror with unveiled face and behold the glory of God.
That's scary.
And then I will know. But are you getting it? Is it making sense here? Are you getting it? Then I will
You have
know.
euphoria, and can you handle euphoria?
Oh, he wouldn't. Why would you?
I know.
Why would it be
I know.
possible? That's the. You know what?
I know.
Listen to this. You know what? That's the whole purpose of this whole deal on this planet right now. Do you know that's what we're here for? Is to become God.
To ascend.
It's not
That's
just
right.
to walk with him, it's something that I could never
We're not here for any other frickin' purpose
I know.
except to become God.
You know, I see this vision of everyone coming together and holding hands, and we just go, we just leave.
Actually, you won't. That's a misconception. You know what you're going to do? You're going to ascend into a different dimension, and you'll still be here. No, and you can go in and out. You're not leaving the planet.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
that's one thing I did like about the celestial prophecy. I love that part where you're standing right there in the middle of these people that are looking for you to
Right.
probably kill you, catch you, if you're lost and come watch
But
them.
that's what Jesus did before it
And
was
because of
just.
your faith, because
That's
of
right.
you knowing who you are, they don't even see you, and they're going in through you, around you, and everything else. They don't even see you.
And that's what Jesus did. He passed through. Remember, he passed through the crowd when it wasn't time for him to get caught yet. And he even told him, he said, "You can't do this unless I let you. You know, I'm doing this on my. You have no control over me."
Was that boasting?
No, he was stating a
Just had to
fact.
ask that.
He was. I might have said. I might be saying it kind of that way, but no, he. Dogs.
Catch me. Catch me if you can.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, just because it's something interesting that if you bring it up and you actually ask somebody if they know about it, you know, in a Catholic church, you walk in, you see all the stained glass and all the figurines or whatever. They've got this halo around their head, or like a partial glove over the head. What does that mean to you? What do you get out of it?
Oh, I know what
whenever
that
you
is.
see that?
Are you talking about like the saints?
Right.
Well, and
But
Jesus and Mary.
Oh, you want me to
I
say
think
it?
I know what you, and I think you might. Does anybody else know what that
Halo.
is?
The halo.
The halo.
I have
above
heard
somebody
that
else.
kind of forgot, but it's
Yeah.
not the aura, I don't think.
It's not the aura. That's their energy, their spirit. Exactly what we're talking about
It
here.
is the aura.
It's just that it's been lost over the hundreds and thousands of years of what that actually is. In the
In religion.
murals and
Yeah.
things, you know, about they got hundreds of murals in the church over in France and stuff like that. You go there, if you actually have somebody go through and pick out and what that scene is and what this is and what that is, that's what that is. And to me, this is a big deal, which actually explains a lot. If you dig as deep as I have, is that there has been aliens here. There weren't necessarily aliens. They weren't necessarily gods. But they were trying to show us what to do, how to do it, and give us the lessons, and all that's been lost and hidden.
Well, I believe that's what the Bible's actually talking about. When Moses went to
Right.
to get the he met up with an alien.
Right.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
I
At all.
don't either. You know, they were here for a reason.
And that's back then they saw heaven as the heavenlies, the sky. So when something comes out of the sky, it's got to be an angel from God type. See, and it's that perception of where they were at the time. They didn't. If you saw a flying saucer, well, think about what's his name went up in a fiery chariot. You know who I'm talking about? Elijah went up in the fiery chariot. It says that God came, got him fiery chariot, and took him. Well, that could very well have been. See, to me, God doesn't need mechanical things. So that was, to me, makes sense. Well, that could be that too.
Okay, yes, because aliens and spirit guides, Bashar, things like that, they are located in the astral psychic realm, where the people that can see auras and energies and chakras and stuff like that, that all is like that other parallel, maybe, reality to the, or a part of this reality. It's just, you can only see it or experience it if you've downloaded that, or if you've tapped into that energy. So that's why some people can see and believe in aliens, and some people just don't get it. It's not in their programming,
Right,
to receive anything in that way.
exactly.
So that's why some people that are more highly sensitive can sense past loved ones and everything, because that's all existing in the same space.
At the same time.
But it's in a
It's just another perception, yes.
realm of this space. So
Right.
you're
They say
and you have to let down those veils.
Actually, that's not true. There's
What?
an infinite.
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 Okay. Well, they say
Yes.
if we see the fourth to fifth one, you're pretty much lucky.
Well, but here's the point in all this.
Realms.
But here's the point in all this. The whole thing that I told you today is part of your ascension to be able to do that.
Right.
See, we're talking about becoming God. Don't you think God can see into every dimension? Yeah. If you're consciously aware of God's consciousness, like it's talking about here, you are in that quantum, all omnipresent realm. You're seeing everything. You know everything. You hear everything. It's all. You're ascending to a place of God. We're not talking about being like God. We're talking about being. See, this is another religious interpretation of God that you need to lose. In fact, you already are God. You're in a physical body. You just don't know it. This is what this whole thing is for. Is to really raise you up, and that the word ascension or resurrection is just symbolic of raising from a physical being and ascending into becoming the highest spiritual being, God. And it says you'll know as you're known. See? Now I'm not done yet. Let me read one more part of this. And it talked about the gifts being passing away, the parts. It says, but now, okay, you've heard this before. But now faith, hope, and love abide. Do you know what I'm going to say next?
And the greatest of these.
But the greatest of these is love. Because that's what God is. Do you think God needs... See, He's everything, and love is everything. See? So you're basically maturing. This is one of the most important books in the Bible. The 1 Corinthians book. When I saw all this stuff in there. But on our way there, because we have to do the process that we're talking about, see. But while we come together, Kelly still may have a gift of word of knowledge for somebody. For you, or for any of us. Or we may have somebody in here that has the gift of healing for somebody. So in the meantime,
Around the edge of something like this.
in the meantime, we have all these gifts of the Spirit to keep us healthy and whole and get knowledge until we do ascend to that. See what I mean? But it won't work with us unless we understand and become the love chapter.
And let go of the fear.
Because when you're in the love chapter, that power and energy there are no boundaries between you and me anymore. See, we're not separate anymore. No boundaries. No fear. You're not going to... I'm not going to condemn you for anything that you've ever done. See, are you there with me like that? Would you be totally forgiven of my past no matter what I've done? Because that's God. See, that's God. You know, loving unconditionally, you know, are we feeling it? And so we're feeling that energy now. See, just by talking about it, just by, and you know, it gets excited when we see things. He's like, oh, they saw that. They finally saw that. And got goosebumps again. And so, you know, my whole body's probably getting healed right now. See, I know that. I know my whole body's right now is health's flowing through the whole thing right now. See, that's the other thing you got to realize. Pretty soon, you walk in here and you're like, I can walk through walls. Because you become more spiritual than you are physical. More wave than you are particle. See? And going into those fourth, fifth dimensions like you're talking about. You'll start, well, remember the story I told you in 1 Peter when Jesus said, or took Peter, James, and John up to the mountain and he turns white, he started praying. So he was doing what he did in the mornings. And he opened the door of the kingdom of that realm, of that dimension. And you know what else? They saw Moses and Elijah. Peter, James, and John saw them. Of course, first thing Peter said, let's build a temple. Oh my God. See, here we go. Oh yeah, start a church.
That was Peter?
It was one of them. I don't know if it's Peter. No, it may not have been Peter.
Wasn't Peter the founder of the camp, basically? The
Yeah,
Church,
yeah.
Church of Christ?
Peter, but it was Peter, James, and John. But that's another whole parallel there. Peter represents spirit, James represents the soul, and John the body, because John never died. See, a lot of people don't know this. If you read Fox's Book of Martyr, his name's not in there. And it says they tried to boil him in oil. And they couldn't kill him. And that's why they exiled him to the Isle of Patmos. Do you know all that about John?
Isn't that where Revelation?
And that's when he wrote the book of Revelation on the isle. They couldn't kill him. Well, see, spirit, soul, and body, Peter, James, and John. If you read the book of James, you'll see it's about the soul. There's all kinds of stuff in there. It's like it's just amazing that ties together and starts making sense. And so we don't know in part anymore. We know putting the parts together. See, I got excited again. Sorry.
Well, and somebody, I can't remember who it was, said that, will it go away or does it change? Or, yeah.
Was it you?
And,
I don't know.
or you said that to her or something. And that's something that just came to me this week is it's like, even if you get out of the habit, you don't lose
The revelation.
the revelation.
You don't lose that.
It's just, it's like, you won't go backwards. Everything is always going to be there. It's just, sometimes it feels like it's gone away because things start feeling heavier because you've got the power. You've just I don't know. There's just blankets over it instead of a veil, you know? And so it's like up to us to pull that blanket off.
Right.
And just go, I can be right back there right now. What's blocking? What's in my eye? You know what is that that's blocking? Because that's how it's like. As soon as I get an epiphany, it's like, all right, there's all my synchronicities again. You know, it's like, okay, I'm back on the flow. But it's like it can feel like you've lost it, but it's not. It's just you've covered it up with something.
Well, I can tell you what it is too, in terms of how Joe talks about it. You've gone back to becoming more matter than wave, and you've turned your frontal lobes from that intention and focus, and you're back to the world focus, physical again. But like she said, all you got to do is turn. In fact, do you know what the Greek word in the Bible for repent is? You already know because I told you. You people that weren't there at Becky. The actual Greek meaning of the Bible is, so I'm facing, like my frontal lobes are facing this way, and I'm facing the programming. All the word repent means is to turn 180 degrees. Which means I'm going to turn from this focus to God. It doesn't mean, oh, I've got to whip myself and, I've got to feel bad about it, No,
Punish myself
it just means turn 180. So the moment you feel yourself in the other direction, repent.
Turn on some music.
Turn. Just turn back to God again. It's all this, and then you don't lose anything. You don't lose any ground. See?
I was kind of equated to like working out, that
You're right.
if you are practicing what we were talking about earlier with, when you feel the fear and you practice moving it to
The other
source,
direction, yeah.
and you practice and you practice and you practice that, then you can get really good at it, just like working out and eating right. You get in really great shape. But if you quit working out and eating right, all of a sudden you get out of shape again, but you still have the muscle memory, you still have
Right.
the knowledge of what you need to do to get back there, and then you go back there.
And I'll tell you
It still
another
takes
word.
practicing every day.
The word repent means, when I studied the Greek and Hebrew, it also means to change your mind. What are we talking about? Reprogramming. Because your reprogramming and changing your mind is going in the complete opposite direction of where you were going. See? So repent isn't what they mean when they preach it in churches. See?
He was talking about feeling the fear. And I don't know if you remember what I said the other day, I never did like the word fear God, that it actually meant the wisdom, the instruction of the wisdom. So
It's
you're
also
saying, just
respect.
become wise.
Yeah.
What you're,
And it means respect
not the
more
fear,
than it doesn't
it's the
mean fear.
wisdom. Turn around, do it again.
But see, that was mistranslated. That word fear doesn't mean to be afraid of.
I just need a moment myself.
That's okay.
I just need a.
Just tell me if you see God out there.
Bring it back.
It's like I just get my head up there. You breathe.
What are you talking about?
That was easier for me to
My
read.
head is about to come off.
In a good way or?
In a good way.
Okay, good.
But it just gets to the point where I have to just hold on to it.
Hey, feel this.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
so you're getting the muscle memory in your body of what it feels like.
Well, you can also see why they would get excited and start dancing and
That's true. I think that's true.
think about it. See?
I have found lately, if I pick up a certain crystal, or just like you got to talking and everything kind of started getting kind of
Energized.
dim,
Oh,
my lungs will just automatically expand,
Expand.
and contract. Yeah, I've been feeling that a lot over the past couple of years.
well, I just read something on Joe's book. I haven't finished the one where it says becoming supernatural. This is really good. But now he's talking about in the meditation, he's teaching them how to breathe. I have to go look back at it to see it exactly. To where you actually take a really deep breath and then you hold it and then you squeeze in here. And he says you will literally push the energy up to the pineal gland to make it push out these chemicals, and you will start hallucinating like you were taking what's the tea in Amazon? Ayahuasca, and it's the DMT in your brain, natural DMT, which is in that plant. But then he said you'll start having all of these visions. Remember how they had visions in the Bible? And then he said these are things that people would have in his seminar, and they couldn't put it into words. They couldn't describe it. And I thought, oh my gosh, Paul was ascended into the third heaven, and said he couldn't describe, put into words what he saw, and he called that being raptured. See, so you were experiencing rapturing there, not total, but partial rapture. Not so you're being raptured. So yes, but I thought I'm going to see what Paul's talking about, or Joe's talking about, so we can learn how to do that. Like when we meditate and do that and press up into the pineal gland.
So you say you breathe, like the breathing comes naturally, and you say you squeeze it?
You actually hold, once you breathe in deeply and hold it, and then you push your diaphragm in like you're pushing up. And it forces the energy. He says it will force literally some fluid up your spine, up to your brain. There's a gate there. He called it something. and then it goes right into it pressures on the pineal gland. Then it secretes all these crazy chemicals. The thing of the phosphorus thing, like the eel phosphorus thing, and just a bunch of different. Just think about how much we don't know that we've been ignorant about all this stuff. Isn't it amazing?
Is that,
I want to try one of your.
is that
things there.
some of the things that, I always heard the word suppressed from us. So people know some of this, but they won't share it.
They know it and they won't share it. Oh my gosh, you do.
I mean, is that true, or is that just that's what I'm asking?
And y'all don't have
Yes,
to
I
rush
think
off.
so.
I don't have anything to do, so you can hang out.
You look just like Versace when you got that head on
Yeah, I'm
that
done.
table. Yeah, glimpse of my little jaw.
Does anybody else want to share anything? The breathing thing.
Yeah,
There was a thing that I learned a long time ago, and it's like you blow everything out, and then you engage the abdominals and the diaphragm, and then it does something, and it's creating this anaerobic breathing, and it does do that. It makes me lightheaded, and it feels like I go into my brain when I do that. But it was a part of a workout that I did a long time ago. So that's kind of interesting because I'd like to see his description of what it is, because I wouldn't be surprised if it's almost the same thing.
It might be. You know,
Because it goes.
I'm sure there are times people have done it and didn't realize it too.
What's his name?
Aspen.
Oh,
So there's something
nice
interesting
name.
before last week, before the meeting last week, about a day or two before, like I'll wake up and tell her a dream. She doesn't dream as much as I do, but I'll have a dream and tell her about it, or you know, we'll have like an animal laying on the window or something.
Right.
I'll try to interpret or whatever. About a day or two before the meeting last week, I had a dream that I was actually trimming my eyebrows in the mirror, and my face fell off.
for 6 hours.
So they unveiled.
And 2 days later, you said that
Oh my
about taking the mask off and looking in the mirror, and I looked over at her and I was like,
Because I told him, I said, I think you're taking a part of your old self off. You know, you're revealing.
that was like,
You
a
know?
day or two before last
Right.
week. So I
Visit too?
was like, I guess that's a good sign.
That's sister. Yes. Yes. That's-
Aragon?
Yeah, Oregon. Or have you? Those are twin cities. Aspen and Oregon are twin cities.
My purse, I'll take you home.
Well, Aragon, isn't that the dragon story?
Yeah.
So that too.
Aragon?
But I looked
Aragorn
at-
is the Lord of the Rings.
I looked it up. And she's a little skittish. She's a little.
Yeah.
She was fine earlier when.
Aragon.
What does empathy mean to you?
What is it?
Empathy. You mean like an empath?
There's a book. They were discussing this guy's book and his thing.
Empathy means to me that I feel exactly what you're feeling.
Okay. There's a book, and I don't know, here's all of you.
I thought
Write it down,
empathy
look
meant
at the
you
name.
really had no feeling one way or the other.
No.
No,
Opposite.
that's apathy.
Oh, yeah, that's
That's
right,
apathy.
apathy.
What I gathered off of the conversation, the podcast, okay. What I gathered from it, that if you don't have a good sense of your empathy and know how to use it and control it, that it's hard to basically do other things.
Well, empathy is being able to feel what someone else is feeling.
Right, it's emotions. That's what I'm
Yes.
looking for. Because this was 3 or 4 days ago. I
But to
listened
me,
it,
that's
so-
happened more to me in the last month because of this experience, like getting more,
Right.
like I'm feeling more empathetic and feeling, which to me, that again is if you're taking down your walls and you're becoming more one with, you know.
Yeah. Empathy, yeah.
Everybody pass it around if you want to write it down.
Empathy is, you know that you've got really good empathy if you cry at like commercials or movies or songs really easy. I mean, right? We got a room full of high empathy people here, you know,
Right.
and you're high on the HSP scale, so you are too. But it's that distinguishing between what's your feeling and what's the other feeling that can cause friction in being a highly empathic person.
I know one thing, a while ago, I'll tell you an example of empathy to me. When she was having her thing, I was ready to cry with her. I was feeling her. You know, I'm feeling it again. You know. See, that's what I.
Right.
Or just letting it go then.
I've always been that way, and that's what I was thinking earlier when you were talking about fear. Is one of my clearest, because ever since I was little, I was able to see different things. And I was told when I was very young, no, you're not seeing those things.
Wow.
Gaslighted.
Until my grandmother said, yes, you are.
No, it was,
And
it was lit.
I remember going to my great grandfather's funeral and being told, don't cry.
Yeah.
Don't put on a show, don't cry.
It helps you lead
So
the
for
fear.
me, whenever I
To be able
get a
to
little
use
I
this.
mean,